Thank you very much for remembering the meaning. We were having fun having a chat earlier, and I told him the meaning of the name. In my country, our names are important, and they do have real meaning, and it's important to us. So I just wanted him to know that every time he calls my name, it means that he will be blessed, because blessing. How can you go wrong? Good afternoon. I'm always proud and glad to be back at IESE. I was a student here in 2003, and I've been a student at IESE over many years at different times. Apart from my Global Executive MBA, I have had so many different courses, and to me, IESE is the perfect place to have this event because, as I was saying, I serve on the board of IESE. So the dean and I had a meeting somewhere in between this morning, and I said to him, you're perfect for this because one of the biggest things about IESE at the heart of its ethos is doing well and doing good. And they're not ashamed to encourage you as a business leader, even as they're preparing you for the world, to seek to do things ethically and to seek to do things right, and to do this in consideration of other people. So I am quite proud that they have partnered with Conscious Capitalism as a group to push the agenda of this, because when you have a business school nurturing future leaders, sowing the seed and the thoughts of what this conference is about in the heart of young, forward-looking people, you hope that a large percentage of them take it to the world and make a difference, and then hopefully we will have a better world. Now, I'm Nigerian, and I know the easiest thing is to say I'm from Africa, but the reality is Africa is a massive continent that the whole of Europe will disappear within it, and a few other countries can be totally subsumed within what's the continent that is called Africa. And it's got about 1.3 billion people and 54 different countries within it. And the beauty of Africa is its diversity and the difference. As you move from nation to nation, you would find that each country, Nigeria, for example, is a country with countries within it, because it's got 36 states, but we have 371 languages and tongues and tribes. And so it's a major, great assignment to try and rule a nation that within its components, it's so divided by itself. So it's difficult when people talk Africa. We just laugh because for us it's really funny. If you want to get into Africa, you have to try and understand what you're looking for, where you're looking for it, and how to deal with that segment and the different parts of it. So you need continent, country, tribe, sectional, specific knowledge in order to guide you across our continent. That's just an aside. But I'll give you a short intro in statistics, and then I'll take it back to why, for us as a continent, the whole ethos and the thinking behind conscious capitalism is extremely important for our future. And the great part of it is we are behind the curve, even as much as we're moving forward. And getting us not to make some of the mistakes that the more developed countries have already made would put us at an advantage. Naturally, we're very communal, so our people have the right instinct and nature for what we're talking about. But as you move into capitalism and the economic space, what tends to happen is as companies structure and become more defined, they also become more refined along the line of the Western companies and Western societies. That is the general trend. And the sad part of it is once that happens, some of the things that are natural to our communities, that make us great as communities and help us to look out for one another. we have a saying that says to you that a child is raised by a village. It's part of how our people think. But why is that? It is very true, because your neighbor will correct you if you're doing the wrong thing without thinking about your mother or your father coming to fight them for correcting you. Somebody's mother that you don't know will ask you, aren't you this person's child? And then if you say yes, he would chastise you like your parents will chastise you if you're doing something wrong. And that's why in our communities, it is believed that it takes a community to raise a child. Everybody looks out for everybody. They don't just look out for their own. That is a trait that would help us to easily imbibe the principle of conscious capitalism, because it means that even as we get into the space of commerce and building institutions and companies and all of that, we will always consider how what we do and how we do it influence our neighbors, influence our larger society, and the fruits and the products of doing that. So let's start by saying, by 2015, there were 226 million just young people. Just to give you an idea of what the future of Africa looks like, so you understand why we need to get it right for us, why this thinking needs to be a part of how we build the generation of businesses, because there's such an abundance of entrepreneurial knowledge within the continent. And right now, there's a lot of money pouring into the continent to help build businesses. Because in reality, when you think in terms of the challenges of a lot of our people dying in the Mediterranean Sea, trying to cross into Europe because they think there are greener pastures on the other side, you realize that to protect Europe itself from the deluge of our people, that we really don't want to have to cross the oceans and die in it to come into Europe, then Africa must work. And for Africa to work, we need to create a system that supports the community, supports our people, helps to build enterprise and create jobs for a lot of able-bodied young people that we have. By 2015, we had 226 million young people between the ages of 15 to 24 who live in Africa. That's 20% of Africa's population, but it's also 20% of the world's youth population. Move the age group from 15 to 24, move it to 15 to 35 years, and it changes to 75% of Africa's population. And that, by 2020, will become about 42% of the world's youth population, one continent. Now, the expectation is at the rate that we are still bearing children, and if that rate continues in some way, it's expected that if that rate continues throughout the 21st century, we will more than double the numbers of young people by 2055. Now, imagine a continent that is then filled to abundance with so many young, able-bodied people, where there is no sense of responsibility or accountability of our communities for our neighbors, where we build businesses just thinking of how we make money without thinking of what happens to our neighbors, where we think of how successful we are and not caring about the influence or the impact of our success on our neighbors. As at today, as it is, I have many friends and colleagues and many affluent or successful people, let's use my country, for example, who live in beautiful houses built with high fences around them. I always say we use our money to build our own prison yards. Why? Because when the rest of the community has not been taken care of in a way that we can all feel safe, what happens is that we ourselves cannot enjoy what we think is the fruit of our labor. So building our communities in every way that would help to create a better world is a responsibility that we cannot escape from. Gandhi said something. He said, wealth without work. Well, that happens on our side of the world, and I bet it happens in many other parts of the world too. When you benefit from the public purse without really working. We have a lot of rich people that you can't explain where they got the money from. Pleasure without conscience. When you can succeed and have so much money to do whatever you want, but it doesn't matter what happens to the guy outside of your gate. You will live in prison houses that you will build yourself. Knowledge without character. There are a lot of smart, dynamic business people, but who within the context of their own character, there's no empathy or love for their neighbors or their society. Because it takes a heart of empathy and consideration for the rest of our community to take certain kinds of decisions in our businesses that will affect how we operate and how we deal with all our stakeholders, whether they are customers or they are staff or they just the totality of our stakeholders. It's about the kind of heart that we have and the interpretation of our personal character. Commerce without morality. Business that doesn't care. If I can make money from it, it's good enough. It's what drug sellers do. Because if you can make enough money from killing enough people, as long as you make the money so you can have whatever you have. You know, sometimes we think it's just the things we've defined as bad that are bad. But sometimes we don't need the drug dealers to explain some of these things. Because sometimes it's in the decisions that we make, even in our own businesses, and how it influences the rest of society. Because ultimately, we're part of a society. And as long as we can live without a sense of accountability for what goes on in that society, we can also have commerce without morality. Science without humanity. You know, I worry a lot right now. The last time I was here, we had a conference. We had the board meeting, I think, in April, and I was here, and IESE was having the conference on AI and some of those stuff. And I was on a panel here, and my conclusion is artificial intelligence is great. It's bringing a lot of efficiency, and there's a lot of expectation to look forward to the future. But are we asking some questions? Because ultimately, for every advancement in it, there are certain social consequences for man. The question is, we have the power of choice. Are we in a position to make those choices even as we're applying the knowledge and the science that is available to us? Are we answering the ultimate questions to say, what exactly do we seek? What exactly do we want to achieve? I mean, I'll show you a picture. I hope it's the next one. I'll come back to it. This is a picture. This is a stadium. And this is just one side of it. These are millions of young Nigerians, able-bodied, young, smart guys. And we have a thing about going to school, especially from the middle to the southern part of Nigeria. We love to be educated. Our parents have been educated for generations. Your parents will be hungry just to ensure you have a university education. They have a thing about school. So I don't know for a fact, but it's most likely that every person there has a university degree. But we churn them out by the millions, but we can't provide work for all of them. And so this was the government advertising to employ, I don't know what the numbers were, but it wasn't a huge number, into whether immigration service or one of those kind of services. And millions of young people turned up. And it was a private company that organized it on behalf of one agency of government. You had to pay to get the form. And at least 15 people died in the stampede that resulted from this. Now, the reason I'm showing you this is, now, if I run a business, I serve on the board of a few corporates. And I remember one of the companies deciding for competitiveness and efficiency to install a productive system that end to end, once they were done, one line, just one line of their product, eliminated almost 500 jobs in one day. Now, the efficiency is good. It makes them more competitive. It makes them more profitable. But it costs lives. Because in reality, how quickly are we able to retrain for what? How many other opportunities are readily available? Because yes, we're creating new opportunities. There are loads of new businesses. Nigerians are some of the most dynamic entrepreneurial people you would know. If you walk through the airport in Nigeria, you will feel the energy from 2 seconds. Because they will sell you water like it's gold, even on the street. They find an opportunity in anything. They're driven, they want to do something. This is who we are. But in reality, how do we even begin to comprehend what artificial intelligence or science provides as efficiencies when the cost, the human cost, stares us in the face? Sometimes it's a tough decision for an organization. For a business, you look at it and you ask yourself, what do I do now? Because you know for every one person you're sending home, there are like 10 lives attached to that. Why? Our social security system is tied to our families. Which means if I'm successful, you can be sure that my uncle, my niece, my auntie, who has any challenges and has any needs, is going to come and ask me for help. That's how we run. That's how our families have been built for generations. Your brother dies, you're going to send your brother's kids to school. You're going to look after your mother's sister who has no kid but is old and needs help. That's just how we are. It's the nature of the African community. But here we are in a different time and a different generation. And as all of these other influences are coming in, we're becoming a bit more self-centered and self-natured, even as we're contending with the challenges of being a competitive global player and being a reasonable community leader in the face of options that are available to us. So yes, science without humanity. We're going to have to decide if every option that science offers us is right for humanity. Sometimes it might be right just for our own business, but we might need a new indices, which adds that as we measure all the value of what science represents, what is the human cost of the option? And times time. Because if there's an immediate short-term solution that will eliminate that human cost, then maybe it's easier to make the decision. But there are many times we actually don't have the answers. But yet, we must take the options that are presented to us because society or the pressure of the business place puts us in a certain light. I'm not asking you easy questions. I wish it was easier. I'd like us to just joke and have fun. But this is real. And it's lives. And if I speak only for my continent, it's about 1.3 billion lives. And those are the challenges that we have as business leaders within our continent. But a seed that we cannot afford to drop. So even as we're raising the next generation of businesses on our continent, that consciousness of community in the midst of our enterprise decisions cannot be lost, because we've survived for generations based on community building and community looking out for one another. Worship without sacrifice. We all have one faith or the other, and we believe in one thing. But would we make sacrifices for our neighbors, even as we hold on to our own faith, whatever that faith is? Politics without principle. I think we see that all over the world, and we can see it in the biggest of them all, playing out every day. You can see how easily even those you think that for generations have been the best at this can drop the principles for the politics and put the rest of the world at risk. Are we repeating the mistakes of the West, or are we seeking to take a different route? These are the questions that I ask every day. Because there are different pressures. We're in between a tug of war. The attractiveness of what are the things that are considered as best practices and acceptable practices in the world that our own businesses look towards to take the examples, and the practices that will best help to sustain our own communities. And we know without a doubt that we must find our way in a way that we build sustained and sustainable communities and support the survival of our own people in our own way. And because business is so key to the lives of our people, ingraining that consciousness of values and ways of building the business, because also we're building so many new businesses across the board, from the micro to the small to the medium, and starting them early with the right thinking will impact on the kind of decisions that they make. What you're discussing for you is an option. What we're discussing, in terms of everything you'll be discussing this whole day at this conference, for us as a continent, I think is a matter of life and death. Because if we don't find means to have the seed of this way of thinking ingrained in our new generation of entrepreneurs coming out of our continent, then we have a major challenge ahead of us. We're a continent of differences, extremes, because for some, this is home. For some, this is home. Same city. I've just shown you two sides of Lagos. I live in Lagos. So they exist side by side, very comfortably. But can they really be comfortable? No. And I know that. But this happens when we begin to show real traits and manifestation of unconscious capitalism. Of we're good, we can make money, we can take care of ourselves on our terms. It doesn't matter who is paying the price. This is our world. Multiple sides. How do we distribute? I'm trying to just answer a few questions just to take you through the heart and the mind of our continent and the issues at stake. How do we distribute capital to bridge this ever-widening gap? Many ways, many options going on right now. We're trying to close the gap. At the institution that I'm chair of, there are loads of attempts and options that we're pulling through. There may be about 50% of our population. Nigeria is 200 million people. We serve our country and we serve many other countries on the continent because we have operations beyond Nigeria. And we have a bank in the UK and in Paris and Abu Dhabi and Beijing. But in order to pull the other 50%, the unbanked as we call them, into the financial services sector to give them a chance, there are various options that we're executing. One that you can see, first gem, women in particular, is very dear to me. After I became chair on the 1st of January 2016, I've been on the board since 2010, but I became the first female chair on the 1st of January 2016. One thing that was clear to me is if Nigeria was going to make its way out, there are two areas that had to be dealt with, the women and the young people. And because we are the pioneer, the oldest institution in my country, and we're key to the development of our country, that's what keeps me awake. We're what is called the strategically important institution. So I know that every action we take at the bank will make or break the country's economy in different ways. So that's a responsibility, but that an institution has to carry, whether it likes it or not. And so we're spearheading, helping women to build personal wealth. Because generally, the wealth of families in Nigeria is built around the man. The man builds the wealth for the family, except that in some cases, he also has the right to marry more than one wife or have a concubine. And if he dies, in some part of our tribes and culture, the family will come and take the wealth built by the man and the woman together, because it's always in the name of the man. So, empowering women to build their personal wealth, that's become a major thing for me. And I'm glad to report we're making serious progress with that. First money agents, those are people that are just traders or whatever across different parts of our communities that are becoming community bankers that we're empowering. The women in Africa, yeah, there are very many powerful women in Africa. WIMBIS is an organization that is at the forefront of that in Nigeria and driving it through. We're moving through other countries in Africa, trying to help them to define this as well. WIMBIS, I'm a co-founder and a past chairperson of WIMBIS. 16 years ago, 12 friends of mine and one gentleman started this organization. And excitedly, we're happy to see what it's become. Because right now, there's hardly anything that has to do with career women in business, in management, and in politics. That WIMBIS is not at the center of it, working with a lot of global organizations. We've put a lot of women on boards because we know that when women sit in certain places, they make a lot of difference. Now, conscious capitalism is more natural to women. Why? We're more communal by nature. We never think just about ourselves. All apologies to the men in the house. And I'm the only girl in my house. So I'm a mother of 3 boys and a husband. So you can understand I cannot afford to be against the men because, they're my constituency. But the fact is, which is why diversity on boards and all of that is key. Because women bring a different set of skill and sense into the boardroom. And it will affect the ability of the companies to make decisions that are more communal. And what we've done at WIMBIS is to say, if you say there are no women to put on the boards, we created WIMBOard. And with WIMBOard, we find the women that are technically competent, and they sign up for a 6-month program to get them board ready. And once they're board ready, we have a database. We ask you, so who are you looking for? Give us the CV. We'll provide you many options. Go and find the person you need from there. And with that move, we've been able to close the gap. We're still working. There's still a lot to do, even as we're building the pipeline from the girl child and teaching them how to win without compromises and teaching the next generation to be women who can stand up and be the best of themselves without asking anybody to do them a favor before they get what they earn. All I'm saying is, if we allow the two gender to be active in making decisions that affect all of us, we will get the best out of all of us. Why? We have different views of the world. We need combined view of both to create the perfect solution to help us have a more consciously deliberate society or community built through our decisions that impact the lives of all of us. I think I'm done with my time, but I want you to remember, no matter what you have or what you build or how successful your business is, at the end of your day and your time, what will count will be the impact and the influence you have had on people, not on things, on people. And so when you consciously and deliberately make decisions that will impact the lives of people positively, whether through the organizations you build, the organizations you serve in, utilizing the position and the influence that you have for that reason, you're doing the world a lot of good. But more than anything else, you're leaving a satisfied legacy that will allow you to sleep at night and sleep without fear. Thank you. Thank you very much.
We have 5 minutes for questions for Ibukun. So who would like to ask the first one? Yes.
I don't know if it's a good question, but in the European Union, we are struggling with the refugees, and they are saying we are closing our borders. Are you in contact with our politicians? Because you have great ideas to solve the problem. We are like, we don't have empathy anymore. We are just closing up because we don't know what to do. We have to help you build a good structure in Africa. Not closing down, help you. Are politicians talking with leaders in Africa, European politics?
Great question.
Well, I think, for one, Macron was in Lagos last week, and he was there for about 3 days. And I don't think he came to play. I think he came because, seriously, if Europe really wants Africans not to come across, they're going to have to help build Africa in any way. Because don't forget, and with all apologies, a lot of resources of Africa help to build Europe. This is the truth. So in reality, there are times where you need to own up to a situation and understand that if your neighbor it's like the analogy I gave you about living in a beautiful house with a big high fence. I'm using my money to build fence, and that's how I showed you the two Nigeria. That's how a lot of my colleagues, that's how we have to live. If you get to my house, the security that the bank believes they need to give to me is embarrassing for me. But if you don't take care of your neighbors, their problem will ultimately become yours. So it's okay to be afraid. We don't bite, as you can see. And you saw that young man that saved that child in Paris the other day, because it's his natural instinct to help save someone. So there's some naughty people in every country. They exist. But the world has worked because we all learn to help each other. And in reality, where we are now, it's a global village. The time of isolation was, I don't know, like 50 years ago, because it disappeared. And who broke it? Europeans. Because until Europeans came to find the continents, everybody lived in isolation. So you created the cross-border traffic. Now, these people, because there's so much, I just showed you the statistics of young people. If people are young, they have ideas and they have dreams. And at this point, we do not have the best governments. I own up. That's our reality for now. So everybody is pushing the best they can, but you need a little help. We're at the point where we still need a bit of help, and so we can get our continent working. If the leaders act according to their actions. Macron came to engage. He met government, he met young Nigerians in sessions, and he had straightforward discussion with them. He set up a club of 15 French people and 15 Nigerians. I'm one of the 15 of 30 to think of solutions of development between the two countries. But that's France. Okay, so I can't speak for your country. You are going to have to take whatever you've heard at this conference all day. No, you are going to have the conversation. Yes. Yes. Because you don't get to come here and listen to everything that they've said from morning till night and go back and be the same. Then they've wasted their time having this conference. That's just true. You have to own it, and you have to go into your own space and find how you use the information you have to make a difference. People always say, oh, just me, what can I do? My whole life, I've believed in whatever I can do, no matter how small. I started, and I've always found out that soon enough, some other people find me along the way, and we combine forces, and it always scales up and becomes bigger. Little drops of water makes the mighty ocean. Whatever you can do to change the world, this is one world. It's easy for me. I was in Nigeria, I was in London, I was in Paris, Monday, Tuesday, I was in London, Wednesday, Thursday, I was in Nigeria by Friday morning. By yesterday night, I was in Barcelona. This is the world we live in. 2 weeks before that, I was in Chicago. From there, I went to Calgary, went from Calgary to Montreal, and then came to London, came to Barcelona for a family wedding, and went straight back to London for a few days, went to Nigeria for a week, and out again. Yeah, that's our world. It's nobody's personal village anymore. It's all of our village. It's one world, and we must find how it works for all of us. How it works, that's the best way.
Beautifully, we still have time for one more question.
Maybe to some people it will sound like a funny question. Well, what can European leadership learn from African leadership? Is there one or two things where you say, look guys, if you would have a look at how we do these things, or we start doing these things, maybe that could be interesting to redevelop Europe a little bit faster and get ready for the challenges of a combined world?
I think communication is what keeps all of us engaged. There are a lot of things we learned from the rest of the world that's helping our continent. There are a lot of practices, institution building and all of that is part of European society that's helping us to build. There's democracy we thought we were learning from a part of the world that's supposed to help us have better government. Now we're not sure because we don't know what example to follow anymore because what we see has taken away that hope. But are there things we are doing? Yes, everybody has something to give. There are many solutions for problems in the world that have been solved in Africa. There's a lot of innovation going on in Africa. There are a lot of young Africans trying to solve African problems. And some of those solutions are applicable in certain ecosystems within Europe. Now, in terms of leaders, how do we share that if we gather in rooms like this together? And I'm not the one or the two or the three black faces in the room. And we're deliberate about, like the France project. There are 15 of us on one side, 15 of them on the other side. We become 30 on one side. And the 30 of us on one side try to find solutions for the two together. And some of our learnings will influence their learnings and vice versa. So I can't give you one answer. Why? Because you and I know there are myriads of issues to deal with. And some of them we have to dig deep and get into the specific. But the biggest solution is that we have mutual respect for one another. And we have the openness of mind to understand that we all have something to give, big or small. And you know, some of those young Africans that die in the Mediterranean, some of them might be the ones who have the perfect cure for AIDS or something. But if they don't get to the place where there's the right education to give them the empowerment to unleash their talent, we will never know. Guess how the Africans are referring to the World Cup now? Guess. Guess who we're supporting at the World Cup? I'll tell you. See, I live in a household of men. I'm the only girl. What, if you go to Nigeria Twitter or whatever and you see all of them, we have 2 teams at the World Cup, Belgium and France. Why? Check your teams. So those are the teams. As far as Africans are concerned, there are no more African teams in the World Cup, but we have 2 teams. We have Belgium and France. Why? Because those teams are largely made of Africans with talents being deployed on behalf of nations. And when the French are excited at a win, or the Belgians are excited at a win, who scored? Some African child who is now French or Belgian, but who is deploying value for the continent. Imagine if he was stopped at the border, any one of the ones that scored the goals. Now, transfer that to every other field, and imagine what can happen. I understand the fear is natural, but we're at this point in the world where we cannot be afraid of ourselves. Why? We need each other. And the problems of the world right now require that we're all thinking together. We're better together than alone. Thank you.
Can you stay up here for 1 second? How many of you knew Ibukun Awosika before coming to the conference? And how many of you will remember her forever because of what we experienced? We certainly have talked in Conscious Capitalism over the years about wanting to have actions to take coming out of each gathering, actions that have a real impact on the team that we're working on, the industry that we're working in, the country that we're located in the world. And I think maybe today we all have found an opportunity to find some way to partner with the Bank of Nigeria, the country of Nigeria, the continent of Africa, or the neighbor in our neighborhood, the business that's just starting up that needs your help and your insight, and that you have the experience. You've suffered the pains and made the mistakes to learn the lessons that you have and I have as well. And this hour inspired us all to step forward and take even the smallest action to help others, or maybe the largest action that we can to help the world together. So what a really profound moment that we've had here together. And with that, we're going to take a 15-minute break and come back at 5 minutes after 5 p.m. and have a great next hour and a half or so together. So thank you. So now we will have an hour together on conscious business in Europe, and the panel will be led by Joan Font-Rodona, who has been a professor of business ethics here since 1990. And he will introduce the panelists, and please stay ready with the questions that you have, because we'll have an opportunity for some Q&A as well. So Dr. Fonfortuna. Thank you. Oh, yeah, you come to